Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.
Welcome members to this session organized by the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. This is a Facebook live chat and live stream organized the 17th day of July 2020. And before I give you more details on it, allow me to introduce myself. My name is Fabiero. I'm the current chair of Engineering Surveyors chapter, a chapter which is part of the 6 chapters of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. In addition to that, I'm also the managing director of Ramani Land Services, a surveying and mapping company based here in Nairobi, and also giving services to wananchi. I'm also a full member of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya and also an associate member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators. So for today, allow me to introduce you to the topic of discussion today, which is the role of engineering surveyors in the emerging markets. This is a very wide topic to be discussed in one afternoon, but I believe I will try as much as I can to cover most of the aspects that are very vital in the emerging markets and the actual role of engineering surveyors and all what they play within the sectors of the economy. As I begin with the discussion matters, allow me also to introduce you to the specific areas that I'll be touching in today. I believe I'll be given another opportunity with the institution to cover some more areas that I might not be able to cover within this afternoon. And as I do that, I believe we are going to capture, and I believe this is something that most members would like to know, the engineering survey as a chapter within the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. So I'll basically try and introduce that to you. The second item that we'd like also to members to be aware of is what is engineering survey, what does it stand for, what do we actually do in the industry or as a profession. And coupled with that, I'll also try and define for you who an engineering surveyor is or who a geospatial engineer is and what we do in the industry. The fourth item that I'll also give an idea to what it is what are the actual objects of engineering survey or objectives of why engineering survey does exist. The fifth one that I'll discuss with you today or this afternoon will be the emerging trends and markets of engineering survey and what input engineering surveyors actually do when they're out there in this new era of doing business. The sixth item I'll also briefly discuss is the professionalism in the industry, what engineering surveyors are expected to do or to practice out there, how they need to meet with people or how they meet their clients and how do they show their professionalism in the industry. The second thing that I'll also try and explain to our members today is our role or the perspective of engineering survey in the environmental matters. If the projects that you do, how do they directly affect the environment and how best or what mitigation measures an engineering surveyor should put in place whenever he's carrying out some of these assignments. And finally, is what promotional items ISK does in order to promote the engineering survey services within the country. So having mentioned that, there are 8 large areas to cover. I know time might be an issue, but I will try my best to cover these areas that have been provided with from the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. So as I begin with the live stream this afternoon, Somebody will ask you, why do we have a chapter called Engineering Survey at the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya? Why should we be part of the Engineering Association of Kenya, for instance? What I can tell you, as a chapter in the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya, Engineering Survey is one of the geospatial chapters that enrolls professionals who've studied courses leading to a degree in surveying, or surveying and photogrammetry, or geospatial engineering. This is also include candidates who've done courses or diploma courses leading to a certificate in diploma in surveying. But to crystallize on that, it basically, what we are talking about basically involves the determination of positions of objects of natural nature or man-made nature on the Earth's surface, and basically recording that information or that data for purposes of planning and also purposes of engineering connections within the industry. And this is also connected to other applications within the industry. There are various branches in the global aspect of geospatial engineering, and these also include geodetic surveys, which involve the measurements of the nature of the Earth in terms of the Earth sizes and all that. Photogrammetry, remote sensing, cartography, which is the making of maps and publication, geographic information system, which is basically the analysis and publication of this data in a digital format. There's the digital mapping aspect and also cadastral surveying. So in a better perspective, why engineering surveyors are also part of the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya is because of the actual background of surveying that we study at the university. We are all aligned as geospatial surveyors, but we specialize in different aspects of surveying. For instance, we have geospatial data managers who are the GIS practitioners. We've got the land surveyors who are basically the cadastral survey practitioners in the industry. And we have the engineering surveyors who are basically dealing with the measurement, the precise measurements of engineering objects, and also setting that out onto the ground. So in a nutshell, that's why engineering surveyors are also part of the noble organization, Institution of Surveyors of Kenya. But what is engineering survey in a perspective? Basically, engineering survey is a broad term used to describe the surveyors, or the work of surveyors, which is practiced within the civil engineering, within the mechanical engineering, within the agricultural engineering, and also electrical engineering. Within those projects that are entailed in those brackets of engineering projects, the work of a surveyor is well defined. And now the broader term to define those particular terminologies that I've explained earlier. Whatever engineering surveyors do in civil engineering works, that broader term is what we refer to as engineering survey. At the same time, it also includes the experts that basically design, develop, and also operate the systems that are being used for collection of these data sets that we collect whenever a surveyor goes to the field. At the same time, it also includes the experts who apply the equipment, the sophisticated equipment that are being used, such as the GNSS receivers. We've got the laser systems, which are now up to date and are basically available in the market. We've got robotic total stations, which are being used for purposes of collecting this data and also analyzing the same data sets. We've got multi-stations, which are as a combination of 2 or 3 systems in one, which are being used for collecting this spatial data for purposes of analysis. But the actual role that an engineering surveyor would play in terms of relating the data that is collected to the actual work that he needs to do, or what that data is going to be used for, involves a lot much more larger than simply the collection of the data for purposes of construction purposes. Engineering surveyors will usually be the first professionals to examine those particular designs that have been done by the engineers. So the analysis of that design before it is actually implemented at the ground would be carried out by a surveyor or an engineering surveyor for that matter. What they basically do will be to analyze the data that has been collected with respect to the design that has been done and relate the two so that they're able to analyze and crystallize, is the data that has been collected, does it actually fit with what has been designed on paper or on a digital format. So in doing that, we are able to relate the two data sets in terms of what has been designed with respect to what has been put on paper. Specifically, it involves infrastructure design projects which are related to construction work. It also involves infrastructure monitoring and also maintenance. There is need assessment, which is also required in engineering survey exercises, which also guide in the decision-making processes. There's areas of mobility that also require engineering survey works. So an engineer surveyor basically will be involved in that aspect for them to be able to deliver on whatever mandates they've been set to do. In terms of aviation and infrastructure work, there's a lot to be done, and a lot are currently being carried out by engineering surveyors. At the same time, also in maritime field, there's a lot that engineering surveyors do in order to meet the expectations of the clients. Going to our third topic or item, which basically guides us towards who an engineering surveyor is in the market. If somebody were to ask you that, what answer would you or would you expect, or what would you relate it with? So engineering surveying draws the expertise, as I've mentioned earlier, from persons who've studied geospatial engineering or surveying. But the real thing is somebody who are specialized in interpreting engineering drawings. That is very key in defining who or segregating who an engineering surveyor is. So somebody who is able to analyze critically the engineering drawings based on the actual layouts that have been presented to them, and setting that onto the ground and seeing a building or a structure being constructed. Someone who is able to carry out that process in entirety is someone who can be called an engineering surveyor. But that's not the end of it, because the industry is changing day by day. And people who are basically setting out this or placement of these engineering structures has commonly been referred to the engineering surveyor. But an engineering surveyor in today's market has actually changed. Today, we have persons who are basically monitoring a project from the beginning of a project to the end of a project, and the beginning of the lifetime of that particular project. That person who is able to do all that processes that are involved in trying to make sure that a project begins to the end of it, and also to maintain that particular project, that is who an engineering surveyor would be. And it relates to many more things, like the actual measurements when a project is being done. And measurements, as I mentioned earlier, is a process of using the equipments that are available in the industry to carry out the precision measurements of all these objects on the ground. So to provide the continuous measurements for purposes of engineering calculations during a construction process is one of the other items that an engineering surveyor would do. So when you're able to carry out exercises when you're going to the field, and you're able to carry out all this using the equipment that you have, and once you've done all the field work, when you get back to the office, you're able to process that data and provide that data for purposes of analysis and purposes of design. That process, the process that it takes to get all that done, is what is referred to as the engineering surveying processes. Back on the same subject matter, in terms of who an engineering surveyor is once you get a design from an engineer, you should be able to plot it with relation to what you've done on the ground, and you need to be able to do all the necessary calculations that are required for actual setting out of this drawing into the ground. So for you to be able to do that, you must be able to prep your work, running from going to the field and making sure that all the controls that have been done, or the ones that you might need to do before you start the actual processing or setting out of this work, does meet the minimum requirements of or accuracy that are demanded when the actual construction or implementation of the project begins. So all that encompassed in terms of participating in the construction, in terms of collecting and analyzing of all the data sets for purposes of quantification, in terms of carrying out the as-built surveys in the field, in terms of doing all the precise measurements for purposes of doing quantities, and also confirmation of the bill of quantities on the ground. When you're able to do all that is put in one platform. That is a person who is referred to as an engineering surveyor. But of course, with all due respect, we've got the land surveyor who is also capable of doing what an engineering surveyor would do. The same time, a GIS practitioner who is trained geospatial engineer should also be able to carry out what an engineering surveyor would do. But the specialization is very key, because that is what defines what you're doing on a daily basis. And that's why we have the 3 chapters within the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya. Moving on from that subject matter to our 4th item, which is what are the actual objects of engineering survey. What I can say with that is the primary basic one is the preparation of plans and maps for purposes of planning and also the design of engineering projects. And this would include heavy mega projects like the construction of a road. So before a road is actually constructed on the ground, an ES practitioner would do several things prior to the actual design of that particular road. So the first thing that an ES would do would be to first carry out what is called a topographical survey of the corridor. This is basically collecting all the data about a corridor of interest, be it the man-made features of the corridor, be it the built-up structures of the corridor, the natural features within the corridor. An ES practitioner will be mandated to collect all that information and present it in a form of format. So once that process has been carried out and finalized, that data will be shared with engineers who will basically carry out the design of the actual road onto using the data that has been presented. And once that design process is complete, an ES practitioner will come aboard again to analyze what has been done and try and relate that design with what has been put onto what needs to be put onto the ground. And the relationship of that design with the ground would only come out clearly once an ES practitioner has set it out on the ground. So that's a very key object in defining what engineering survey is. The same would also apply to pipeline projects where an easement for a pipeline is required. And you know, for water to flow from one point to another point, there must be either a pump pumping the water, or it might need to use gravity for that matter. So in the event of moving water from one direction to the other spot, the levels in between these two stations needs to be known. And the person who should be able to get that information in its accurate form is an ES practitioner. So providing that data in its accurate form would basically be done by an engineering surveyor. The same also would apply to defining the power line where it lives, and I believe this is something that has been done in the country. We've seen a lot of high voltage lines cutting across people's properties across the country. And to get that done precisely, and also to make sure that whatever route has been chosen actually meets the minimum design requirements, an ES practitioner would be involved at the onset of that particular project. And to get all that information and give it out in its desired form to the electrical engineers who basically design the route Then after the designing of the route, then that data will be referred back to the ES practitioner, who will basically set it down on the ground so that it can fit the bare minimum requirements, as may be the case in most of the projects. The same also would apply in aviation in terms of supporting the aviation requirements, like the runway, for instance. We understand a runway, in most occasions we see it as if it is flat, but in reality it's not really flat 100%. There's a basic curve that it has to follow as well for it to meet the minimum design requirements. For that to be able to happen and the design to be able to fit into the ground, an ES would be able to be called upon to be able to set that structure or that design onto the ground. So those are some of the basic objects of engineering surveying, and why engineering surveying is very important in our lives or our day-to-day activities. To be more precise, the actual activities that are actually carried out during such an exercise would include the profile survey, which is basically to understand the levels of the center line of a utility line, or be it aviation corridor, for instance, that's an airport runway, or be it an easement corridor for purposes of defining the levels on the pipeline corridor. So the other thing that also an ES would do will be to carry out the cross sections, which are basically being used for quantity or for volume calculations. There's the actual setting out, which I've mentioned or alluded to earlier. And one key element or one key area that has always been forgotten, or maybe may have been taken away from the work of an ES practitioner, is the measurement survey. And I'll discuss more of this when I'm coming to the emerging areas for engineering surveyors. Measurement survey basically means carrying out precise measurements, following a laid out alignment structure or a design structure for purposes of quantifying what needs to be done on the ground with respect to quantities, with respect to dimensions, and transferring that real life information onto the actual design and comparing the two so that it can be like for like. So when you're able to do that and present a report of an as-built drawing against the design drawing, that is something that is very key in our day-to-day activities. So measurement survey is very vital, and it plays part as an emerging role in the work of an engineering surveyor. There are other aspects also or activities that which also define the objects of engineering survey. These also include the verticalities of vertical buildings. Let's say a high-rise building, a 40-story or a 50-story, like the ones we see in Dubai. And I believe there's one coming up in Nairobi now, courtesy of one of our local entrepreneurs. So verticality of a building is very vital in the sense that when a building is not purely vertical, there are various elements that within the structure itself that the integrity can be questionable. So an ES practitioner would be able to define or find out or remeasure the actual structure and relate with what was on the design with the actual measurements of how the structure behaves now when it has already been constructed. So to be able to do that, to make sure that the building is actually vertical, the relationship between what has been done and what has been measured needs to come out clearly. And for that to be done, an ES practitioner will be able to do that. Other areas of deviations also include the volume calculations, for instance, the cut and fill. All these are practically vital, especially when you're doing work in a dam environment. We understand a dam, you have to dig, you have to basically do a lot of cut, and that material needs to be transferred somewhere. So someone has to be paid to move materials or haulage materials from one spot to the other spot. So to know the actual volume of those materials, they have to be computed. And the person who is able to do that is an ES practitioner. So those are some of the areas of interest, or what would basically define as some of the objects of engineering survey in our industry at the moment. Allow me to move, because I know time is not really on our end. Allow me to move to the fifth item, which is the emerging trends or the emerging markets within the profession, or for this matter, the practice of an engineering surveyor. There are many of them, but I can relate to about 3 or 4 of them. Just to highlight on the same, I think there's a good demand for real-time data management and real-time data transfer. This is a key emerging area where an ES practitioner, when he's in the field, and a designer in the office, they need to be able to communicate based on the data that is collecting in the field. So for that to happen, there is need to be able to send that data real time to the designer back in the office. That's one key area. There's also demand for technologies for collecting data, and ES practitioners are directly becoming more relevant in designing the way these equipments look, and also designing the softwares that are necessary or required in terms of collecting this data from the field, because a hardware cannot operate minus a software. So the process of designing that software would basically require the input of a user, and that user is the ES practitioner. And of course, we've got the other disciplines who also play a vital role in the decision-making process in defining how these softwares will basically operate. So in more details in terms of the emerging trends and the emerging markets where an ES practitioner will be more relevant, as I mentioned earlier, the real-time engineering spatial data managers, an ES practitioner basically for that need to transfer data directly from the field to the office. An ES practitioner will basically get that data or collect that data from the field, process it there, and transfer that information back to the office. So that process is very vital because time nowadays is money. And if I'm basically constructing a multi-billion project that involves both civil engineer, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, they'd want to see that information real time. So as I'm collecting that information in the field, I should be able to relay that information to the actual user, who is the designer in this case. So that process, or to be able to get that done, I'll require somebody who understands the collection, somebody who understands the processing of that data, and somebody who understands why that data is very important. And that's one of the emerging areas where an ES practitioner would play a key role in. There's other technologies like the building information modeling, which has come in key. This is one of the other platforms that has been developed over time, in the sense that when a civil engineer is looking at a drawing, an architect is also looking at the same drawing, an electrical engineer looking at the same drawing, and an ES practitioner who is in the field is also looking at the same drawing. So when somebody makes any change on that particular drawing, an ES practitioner should be able to collect new data sets that will fit the new requirements by the respective professionals who are looking at that data wherever they are. And they could be distributed across the globe. It doesn't really matter. But the data itself is being shared real time. That is the key thing. And an ES practitioner should play a vital role in making that possible. The other element which I've also mentioned as I was highlighting the areas of emerging markets and also emerging trend in the industry is the participation in re-engineering of these field data collection technologies. As a user, you understand the technology better. As a user, you know exactly what are the challenges you are facing when you're collecting that data in the field. So you are more required in the process of re-engineering this particular equipment in terms of the software and also on the hardware bit. So this is an area that ES practitioners should take a challenge in and at least try and diving themselves into. I know of many people who've done this before, so it's not really like a first for the ES practitioner, but we here in Kenya also need to take this as a process that we may need to re-engineer and also give a contribution to our software developers and also our hardware manufacturers. The other area of an emerging market is ES practitioners are currently getting involved critically from the beginning of a project, and they'll be there for the lifetime of that particular project, which means the ideality of having an ES being the project manager is becoming more handy. Since you understand the project, you've been there from the beginning of the project, and you'll be there for the lifetime of a project, you are better placed to be a project manager in this particular industry. And this is an emerging area, and there's many practitioners who are outside there who also take advantage of the situation, but I can tell you for sure that ES has evolved over the years. Primarily, the collection of the data has changed. The way we collect our data has changed. The gadgets we use now to collect our data has changed. The softwares we apply in processing that information has also changed. Now, we need to be able to use that data and manage it much better for the lifetime of a particular project. And to be able to do that, we have to find ourselves or push ourselves into project management, because that's a key area that we can propel our expertise in. Because engineering is a wide field. Engineering survey that supports engineering is also a wide field. And systematically, we are changing the way we interact with data, with information, and with the relay of that information to the relevant practitioners. So where an ES is involved at the beginning of project, he is better placed to become a project manager for that particular project, because he will be there from the beginning of the project to the end of the project, where a certificate of completion is signed, but at the same time, he'll be able to participate or has a chance to participate in the maintenance and also in the confirmation that the project actually met the actual requirements. You have the knowledge that you require, you also have the skills. So you as an ES practitioner has a better chance in meeting the role of a project manager. One other area that is also key is ES practitioners are emerging as the new measurements engineers in the industry. Somebody would ask what a measurement engineer does. Basically relies on a surveyor, to be honest. Because for his work to be complete, measurements have to be done. And the only person who knows what measurement is all about in terms of precision is a surveyor. So an engineering surveyor would really play a vital role in merging his role with those of a measurements engineer. And I'm saying this because I've seen it happen in other industries, especially in the developed world, like in Australia, like in Canada, like in the UK. The specialists who specialized from the engineering survey background and have become the measurements engineers for the particular projects that they're dealing with. So this is a key area that an ES practitioner should be able to take advantage of, not to just wait and do the setting out in the field, to carry out the cross-section work, to carry out the profile work, but to go beyond that and make good use of the data that is collecting by creating data out of what is already collected, so that they can make a meaning out of it, like in terms of volume calculation, to measure the levels on the ground and converting those levels into actual quantities. That is what a measurement engineer does, and that critical role can be taken over by the engineering surveyor. So as I've mentioned earlier, there are other areas of emerging markets that engineering surveyors can play a critical role in, especially in the computation of the built-up environment in terms of volumes and calculations. So it is upon you as an ES practitioner to take that challenge and divest your skills so that you can be able to tap the new emerging areas. One last thing that I'd also like to mention as an emerging area for the ES, the engineering surveyors, is in terms of contract management. Contract management is very vital for any particular project, be it a simple topographical survey, or it's a mega project that involves 1 million professionals. Being a contract manager does not mean that you must understand the law. Being a contract manager simply means you understand the process that it takes to get a project done. And you being a person who understands the spatial environment better than anybody else, it is a critical opportunity for you to start divesting your skills towards contract management. And I'm saying this particularly because there are particular contracts that are being issued out in our industry, but the management of those contracts are left for other professionals. You as an ES practitioner, and especially something that touches on engineering survey, you should be able to take the mandate and challenge the persons who are giving out these opportunities and take that role as a contract manager, because you understand the scope, you understand what needs to be done, you understand the actual measurements, and also you understand the feasibility of what that particular development needs to portray to the general public. You are in a better place of being a contract manager for that particular project, and a better accountability manager to make sure that that project, whatever it is, will meet the desirable objectives. So I challenge you as an opportunity, try divesting our skills towards climbing these new frontiers in the industry. Well, much more on that can be discussed in a future series, but because of time limitations, I'd like to move to our item number 6, which is the issue of professionalism in the industry. And this basically is vitally important because in any subject matter or in any contract that we deal with, professionalism is very key. Whatever you do outside there, you need to be accountable for it. The people that you're working with, they all need to be accountable on what actions they're taking. We have an Institutional Surveyors of Kenya, and we have several committees that basically are charged with different responsibilities. One of them is a Professional Practice and Ethics Committee. This committee is basically charged with the responsibility of providing information to our professionals who are outside there on the best practice of carrying out whatever it is that you are involved in. We should be in line with the ethical issues that we all struggle with on a day-to-day basis. So ISK plays a critical role in defining who a professional would be, or who a professional, or what a professional should be able to carry out. Being a member is very key, because you'll have the benefit to enjoy all these professional requirements that you are expected to do. And also, it also raises your profile as a person, because you'll be proud to be a member. You'll get a certificate of being a member. When you're going outside there, you're able to show it to your clients, because you're relating with the same professionals in the industry. So I would encourage our members, who are potential members who have joined the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya, to actually consider this as an opportunity for building your particular career. But in terms of professionalism in a different perspective, ISK offers opportunities in terms of training our members. At the same time, they offer opportunities in terms of peer-to-peer education, where you have a chance to meet with another practitioner who is doing the same thing as yourself. You're able to share notes, but through a forum organized by the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya. It is very vital that you join the institution so that you can be able to enjoy those particular benefits. And joining is very easy, as I've mentioned earlier, or as I may mention the next few minutes. We have different categories within the institution. We've got the student membership category, We've got the graduate member category, we've got the full member category, and also we've got the affiliate category within the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya. So you can join at any particular level, but you have to start from one level before you move to the next particular level within the institution. So in terms of professionalism, as an institution, there's a practice that you need to carry out. You need to get information from institution on the PPE from the PPE committee, who are mandated in terms of disciplining the professionals whenever there's an issue or an issue arises between yourself, who is a practitioner, and the industry or your potential employer who is outside there. So that's more like what I would say on the professionalism matters within the industry. The second last thing in terms of our new area of interest, which is environmental preservation. Well, there's not much I would want to say different from what my other colleagues have mentioned in some other series of presentation. But to our professionals, I believe you may be acting in different capacities in those particular projects. But whenever you are involved in such particular projects, an ES practitioner will basically be able to promote for rehabilitation of the grounds that have been disturbed when an engineering project has already taken place. So in terms of collecting that data, providing it to the environmental conservationists so that they can be able to design something within the project area that will basically protect the environment, that would be very ideal, and that's something that you could do. So collecting that data and disseminating it to the right professionals, that's one key thing that an ES practitioner would play a key role in. At the same time, if you have the opportunity of being a project manager, I believe it boils down to the actual practice, because a project basically starts from the beginning where you initiate the initial survey to the final end where you already have the actual structure on the ground. But before you leaving the site, there is the environmental aspect that needs to be taken care of. As a project manager in that particular project, if you have a chance to be so, it will be a critical role that you invite the environmentalists to try and do the landscaping for those particular projects, so that whenever you leave the site, everything is back to almost normal or near normal to what it should be at the end of that particular assignment. And also the promotion of green space is very important. So whenever design is happening, it will be quite critical that that design also includes the elements of green space and also opportunities for walkways, for instance. So when you have a chance to participate in such a particular assignment, it is also vital to collect that data and provide it to the designers who basically set up those particular design for you to be able to set it back on the ground for implementation. So it's a critical role that is required so that at least we can also be able, from our own area of operations, we should be able also to conserve the environment. And lastly, for today is what role is the institution playing in promoting the engineering surveyors practitioners, or what is it that, or what benefits would we gain by being members or engineering surveyors members within the Institutional Surveyors of Kenya? ISK is a member body, and it's a very critical one in our profession. So, and it's also mandated primarily to promote the member services. First, you've got to register as a member for you to even realize the benefits. So it's quite key that that needs to happen. And through that process, ISK will give you the opportunity of partnering with your peer members. Whenever there's a meeting called upon, maybe a peer-to-peer education, you'll have the opportunity to interact with other peers as well. At the same time also, ISK promotes members by inviting potential employers for projects to come and meet with our members. And these forums are usually organized either through a webinar or through a Zoom call with potential employers, where you are able to meet with your future employers, let me say that, and interact with them and understand exactly what is it that they require, or what services do they require that you can actually be able to support in. And that's an opportunity that is offered within the institution. At the same time, also the creation of standards of practice in how we need to operate as engineering surveyors in the industry. As a chapter, we are already developing the standards of practice, and also this is being built from the background of the non-title surveys document that already we have in play. So building up from there, because now we have something to start from. So basically channeling all our energies to build something much better than already what we have. And you playing a part in the process is already providing the benefit that you might require in making sure that you're able to operate in a seamless environment. And lastly, on the same chapter, is the trainings that are being offered by the institution. There are many of them. You're invited to go to the website so that you can be able to see what other opportunities are available, where you can also interact with the potential clients, at the same time also your peer practitioners within the industry. So this basically would mark the first part of the session of today. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a live chat where we require you maybe to provide some questions. We are not really the experts, but we play our part in terms of addressing some of them. And the numbers where you could provide the questions, we have on our WhatsApp line, which is 0724 929 737. You can also reach us through info@isk.or.ke. And this, you can also reach us through our website, which is www.isk.or.ke. So you can fill any questions through the chat platform. We'll be able to get them and address them as we continue the second part of the session. Thank you so much for now and for listening to me in trying to provide an insight on our topic of today, which is the role of engineering surveyors in the emerging markets. So thank you, and hope to see those comments or those questions coming in so that we are able to address them with you together. Thank you once more again.
Introducing the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat. Do you have a question from any of the following areas? Land survey, valuation, building survey, land administration, engineering survey, estate agency, property management, and geospatial information management. Join the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya live stream and live chat every Friday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m.